I've got my collar pinned. It has the right sides together. If your fabric, like muslin, doesn't have right sides, you don't need to worry about that. I'm lining it up again on the edge of the presser foot. And I'm going to hold on to the thread so it doesn't get pulled under. Make sure you backstitch. And I could have marked a point right there and turned it. And if I had done that, I could put the needle down in the point and turn it, but that's not how I planned this. So now I'm back stitching off the end. You want to be careful about keeping those stitching, the edge of the seam allowance exactly together as you come around. And on this end, I'm right here is where my stitching lines come together. So I'm just going to put the pin there, and then I'm going to stop and pivot this time. So I could backstitch right here. I could also use a really tiny stitch. So I've made a stitch past, so I'm going to come back and just put my needle down. And I think I'm going to switch my needle positions tiny right there, and then I'm going to put it back up to 2.5 so that it doesn't come apart. And I want to back stitch. So I like the way this point turned out better than the other one. So we'll look at that first one again. And it looks to me like I missed a spot. But when I turn it over and look at the back, I didn't miss a spot. But I'm not sure that's going to be my best corner. But I did catch the whole thing. So now that I've got the collar sewn together, and if your collar is a different shape, that's fine. The traditional one is curved right here, and then you wouldn't have to worry about a point. But I've stitched the outer edge, not the neckline opening, so I'm going to turn this around, and I'll have to work on it some more when I get it to the iron. But I'm turning it right side out so that it's ready to sew into the neckline. And before I do that, I can tell I've got some really pointy points. I need to get my scissors and trim that, but I'll show you that at the ironing board. And then this will be turned right side out. And we'll come back to the collar. That's just some preliminary, and I'll set it aside. And now we have this, and I haven't decided the best way to do this sleeve. There's 2 or 3 different ways to sew this in different sewing orders, but because, I mean, ideally the best way to do it would be to prepare it for in the round and stitch it up the inside of the seam so that this can all be round when it's finished. But because this is half scale and it's tiny, I'm going to go ahead if you were using a serger, you could serge this edge, but I'm not expecting that for this assignment. What I am going to do is just stitch it in place because this stitching line will be hidden. So I can either straight stitch it or zigzag, and for our purposes I'm going to just straight stitch. Just right there on the edge so it holds it in place. I'm trying to keep this simple for beginning level students. Did I forget to back stitch at the other end? So that is stitched in place, and then when it comes up and it's folded, it's going to be held in place on the edge by the stitching line over here, but we're not going to put that in yet. You need to wait until we're putting it, we've got it part way in the armhole. I am, and I'll do it on the back side so it's easier for you to see, I am going to put a basting stitch from the bottom, from about where the notches are over to the other side, and I'm going to change my stitch length to as high as it will go, and just put a quick basting stitch in there. And it's going to be easier if that basting stitch is a little bit inside of the 1/4 of an inch, a little bit less than a 1/4 of an inch, so it doesn't show, but I can always unpick it if it shows. There you go. Oh, but I don't want to pull it yet. So I want a nice long thread tail for that too. And it's already starting to roll over just a little bit. So that's going to be ready for me to set aside. I could probably stitch this in place right now, and I think I'm going to do that. So this is the inside of my sleeve, this is stitched down, and this is only if you're doing the folded cuff version of the sleeve. And I've got the thread where you can see it on the inside, but because I'm going to fold up the cuff, it's going to disappear and not show. So I'm just going to tack that seam so I don't have to worry about it later. Am I? No, I'm not. I'm going to wait until after to do that. And then I've got my shoulder seam that I need to sew. And those little facings. There they are. So I have my armhole facing pinned together at the shoulder. Changing my stitch length back to a mid-range, like a 2.5. But I know everybody's sewing machines aren't the same, so mid-range is what you're looking for. Something that you can unpick, but that is stable. And then stop with your needle position up. This is one of the older sewing machines in the lab, so it doesn't have that. But it's my favorite because it's more similar to what I grew up using. Okay, so that's my armhole facing. And we're going to go press all of this now, and then we'll sew some more. And if you want to stop here and bring what you have into class, I will help you pin the next portion so that you can finish it for the week after. So this is a good stopping place. But please be to this point where you've got your front and back with your back neck facing all sewn together in a circle. You have your sleeve prepared, your collar prepared, and your armhole facing prepared to that point. And now we'll go press.